In the early hours of an ordinary morning, inside a quiet kitchen in Battle Creek, Michigan, a simple culinary accident occurred. Few realized this moment would ignite one of the most bitter family rivalries in American industrial history. At the heart of this story are two brothers, Dr. John Harvey Kellogg and Will Keith Kellogg. Born into the same household, shaped by the same discipline, they would eventually stand on opposite sides of a war neither initially intended. John Harvey Kellogg was the elder. A physician, reformer, and moral absolutist, he believed the human body required strict control. Pleasure, in his view, weakened both health and character. Will Keith Kellogg, younger and quieter, possessed a different temperament. He was practical, observant, and drawn to systems rather than sermons. Where John enforced rules, Will watched processes. The brothers' lives revolved around the Battle Creek Sanitarium, an institution John controlled with near-total authority. Wealthy patients from across America arrived seeking cures for digestive illness, fatigue, and nervous disorders. Inside the sanitarium, every detail was regulated. Patients followed rigid schedules, exercised daily, and consumed meals stripped of indulgence. Food was medicine, not enjoyment. John Harvey Kellogg believed modern diets corrupted society. He banned meat, caffeine, alcohol, sugar, and spices. His philosophy was extreme but influential, attracting both followers and critics nationwide. Food experimentation became central to the sanitarium's operation. Grains were cooked, baked, rolled, and dried repeatedly, all in pursuit of digestibility and restraint. One day, cooked wheat passed through rollers by accident, forming thin flakes. When baked, they hardened into something entirely new. The flakes were bland, dry, and intentionally unexciting. John approved the flakes immediately. To him, they were ideal, filling, flavorless, and morally safe. They were served to patients without ceremony or expectation. Unexpectedly, patients tolerated the flakes well. Some even requested them again. Visitors noticed. Quiet curiosity spread through the sanitarium halls. John dismissed the attention. Popularity worried him. Anything enjoyable risked indulgence, and indulgence threatened discipline. He forbade any attempt to sell the flakes commercially. Will noticed something different. He saw consistency, scalability, and potential demand. The flakes could be produced in volume. They could travel beyond Battle Creek. At first, Will kept his thoughts private. He respected his brother's authority, but questions grew louder. Why confine a useful invention to a single institution? Quietly, Will began experimenting. He adjusted baking times, tested textures, and explored ways to make the flakes more appealing without abandoning their purpose. The defining moment came when Will added sugar. The flakes became crisp, pleasant, and desirable. What had been medicinal now tasted like food. John reacted with fury. Sugar symbolized moral decay. He accused Will of corruption, of betraying the sanitarium's mission and undermining his authority. Will defended himself calmly. He argued that improvement did not destroy purpose. He believed accessibility mattered more than ideology. The argument changed everything. What began as disagreement hardened into resentment. Trust fractured. Family loyalty gave way to opposing visions. Communication deteriorated rapidly. Meetings turned hostile. Decisions were questioned. The brothers no longer worked toward the same future. The conflict between John Harvey Kellogg and Will Keith Kellogg did not remain private for long. Workers sensed tension. Decisions stalled. Authority inside the sanitarium became uncertain, as two visions silently competed for control. Order. Will believed adaptation ensured survival. These philosophies clashed not only in words, but in daily operations, shaping every choice about production and distribution. John tightened restrictions inside the sanitarium kitchens. Recipes were locked away. Access was limited. Control became stricter, revealing his fear of losing ownership over ideas he believed were inseparable from his identity. Will responded by preparing quietly. He studied packaging, machinery, and transportation. He observed how food moved through rail networks and how American households consumed breakfast. Breakfast in America was changing. Industrialization accelerated daily life. Families sought convenience. A product requiring minimal preparation fit perfectly into a modern routine few yet understood. John ignored these shifts. To him, health reform stood above market trends. He believed commercial success inevitably compromised moral integrity. The brothers' relationship deteriorated beyond professional disagreement. Family gatherings became strained. Silence replaced conversation. Respect eroded under the weight of resentment. Will faced a choice: remain subordinate forever or claim independence. The invention's future, and his own, depended on a break he knew would permanently alter his family. In 1906, Will Keith Kellogg officially separated from the sanitarium. He founded his own company, using improved cereal flakes designed for mass consumption. John viewed this act as theft. He believed the recipe, philosophy, and authority belonged solely to him. Legal action followed, transforming a family dispute into a public battle. Courtrooms replaced kitchens. Lawyers debated ownership of ideas. The question was unprecedented: could a belief system claim legal rights over a recipe? While courts deliberated, consumers decided faster. Will's cereal sold rapidly. Demand surged beyond Battle Creek, spreading his name across the nation. Advertising played a critical role. Will embraced bold messaging, positioning cereal as modern, nutritious, and essential to American life. John watched his influence fade. His philosophy remained respected, but confined. Will's success redefined breakfast, culture, and wealth generation. Battle Creek transformed into an industrial hub. Competing factories emerged. Grain processing dominated the town's economy. Among observers was Charles William Post, a former sanitarium patient. He recognized opportunity where ideology once stood. Post applied aggressive marketing strategies, learning from Kellogg conflicts. He positioned cereal not as restraint, but as strength and vitality. Competition intensified. Battle Creek became the center of an industry born from rivalry. Innovation accelerated under pressure. For John, the loss was personal. His vision had escaped him. The product evolved beyond his control, reshaping his legacy. For Will, success came at a cost. Wealth replaced brotherhood. Expansion replaced reconciliation. The family fracture became permanent. As Will Keith Kellogg's company expanded, John Harvey Kellogg doubled down on his moral campaign. He published essays, gave lectures, and warned that commercialized food would weaken American discipline and health. To John, the issue was never money. It was control. He believed ideas lost purity once released into markets driven by pleasure and profit rather than restraint. Will saw America differently. He watched cities grow, schedules tighten, and families seek speed. Breakfast became a functional necessity, not a ritual of ideology. Factories scaled rapidly. Machinery replaced hand labor. Efficiency became the new religion of industry, and Will mastered its language fluently. Railroads connected Battle Creek to the nation. Cereals traveled from Michigan to New York, Chicago, and beyond, embedding the Kellogg name into American households. John's influence retreated inward. The sanitarium remained respected, but isolated. His brother's success confirmed a truth he refused to accept: the public had chosen convenience over doctrine. Legal battles continued intermittently. Patents, trademarks, and ownership claims filled court records. The brothers spoke only through attorneys. The conflict reshaped their identities. John became a symbol of rigid reform. Will became the architect of a consumer empire. Both roles were permanent. As wealth accumulated, Will invested in branding. Characters, mascots, and slogans transformed cereal into a cultural fixture rather than a mere product. John rejected branding entirely. He believed symbolism distracted from discipline. His refusal further separated him from an evolving America. Meanwhile, Charles William Post aggressively expanded his own cereal empire. He framed competition as destiny, using fear-based marketing to dominate shelves. Post's success validated Will's instincts. Markets rewarded adaptation, not purity. Battle Creek's identity as the cereal capital was now irreversible. Families watched these men rise and fracture simultaneously. Wealth created distance. Business decisions replaced emotional bonds. John's loneliness deepened. He lived surrounded by followers, yet estranged from the brother who shared his beginnings. Will rarely spoke publicly about John. Silence became his shield, masking unresolved guilt beneath layers of success. The cereal industry now influenced agriculture, transportation, and advertising nationwide. A family feud had quietly reshaped American capitalism. Children grew up eating products born from conflict, unaware that breakfast routines traced back to a stolen recipe and broken trust. The brothers aged separately. Time did not soften resentment. Neither publicly reconciled. The fracture remained unresolved. By the early 20th century's end, the outcome was clear. Will had won the market. John had lost control, but not conviction. The echo of their rivalry would not end with them. It would shape future generations, rival dynasties, and the rules of American industry itself. As the Kellogg Company's profits soared, Will Keith Kellogg began to attract investors, bankers, and industrial allies who saw breakfast cereal as the future of modern nutrition. These men spoke the language of scale, margins, and national distribution. Will listened carefully, learning how empires were built not just on ideas, but on alliances. John Harvey Kellogg watched this transformation with alarm. To him, external investors represented corruption, outsiders diluting a moral mission. He tightened rules at the sanitarium. Diets became stricter. Behavior codes harsher. Discipline replaced compassion as his primary tool. Staff turnover increased. Some doctors quietly left, uncomfortable with John's rigidity and increasingly extreme beliefs. Meanwhile, Will refined his public image. He positioned himself as a pragmatic innovator rather than a reformer, appealing to families, not idealists. Advertising campaigns emphasized energy, vitality, and modern living. Breakfast cereal became associated with progress itself. This shift infuriated John. He believed pleasure weakened the soul, and marketing pleasure through food was dangerous. Letters between the brothers ceased entirely. What once was disagreement had hardened into ideological warfare. Their feud mirrored a broader cultural conflict: restraint versus indulgence, control versus freedom, doctrine versus demand. Battle Creek itself became divided. Some residents supported John's moral vision. Others embraced Will's economic prosperity. Local newspapers fueled the rivalry, portraying the brothers as embodiments of two Americas colliding. Charles William Post exploited this tension masterfully. He framed his own brand as balanced, healthy, yet enjoyable. Post's marketing often referenced fear, weak digestion, nervous disorders, modern stress. He sold reassurance in a box. The cereal wars intensified. Shelf space became contested territory. Retailers benefited as rival brands battled for dominance. Behind the scenes, legal teams worked relentlessly. Lawsuits drained time, money, and emotional energy from all sides. John's health began to decline. Ironically, the man obsessed with bodily purity faced physical deterioration. Will noticed, but said nothing. Reaching out now felt impossible. Pride stood taller than empathy. Their parents were long gone. No mediator remained. The family fracture was now permanent. The stolen recipe had become something far greater, a catalyst for an entire industry and a warning about ambition unchecked. Children of the era grew up idolizing industrialists, unaware of the emotional cost behind those towering successes. Breakfast cereal entered schools, hospitals, and military rations, embedding itself into the national routine. John viewed this expansion as a loss of control. His ideas now belonged to the world, not to him. Will viewed it as legacy. His name would endure long after personal conflicts faded. Yet even success could not silence memory. The past lingered in quiet moments, unspoken but heavy. The brothers' rivalry set a template future entrepreneurs would unknowingly follow: innovation, betrayal, expansion, and fracture. What began in a sanitarium kitchen had reshaped American mornings forever. But the true cost was not measured in profits or market share, it was measured in silence between blood relatives. This silence would echo across generations, influencing heirs, rivals, and future dynasties. As factories multiplied, Will Keith Kellogg refined production methods, standardizing processes to ensure every box tasted identical across the nation. Consistency became his obsession. In a growing consumer economy, trust was built through repetition, not ideology. John Harvey Kellogg, meanwhile, retreated further into theory. His lectures grew longer, more abstract, drifting away from practical reality. He spoke of purity, abstinence, and discipline as if they could be enforced indefinitely upon a changing society. Patients at the sanitarium began to decline in number. New medical trends promised freedom rather than restraint. Will expanded distribution westward, securing rail contracts that ensured Kellogg cereal reached even remote towns. Ironically, railroads, the symbol of industrial might, now fueled the very empire born from a health retreat. The brothers never acknowledged this irony. Each believed history was validating his own worldview. Charles William Post watched closely, learning from both men's mistakes while exploiting their weaknesses. Competition sharpened innovation. New cereals emerged, flavored, shaped, and branded for specific audiences. Children became the new target. Bright packaging replaced austere messaging. John viewed this as moral decay. To him, appealing to children was manipulation. Will saw inevitability. Culture, once in motion, could not be reversed, only guided. By the 1910s, the Kellogg name had split into two identities: spiritual authority and commercial power. Neither brother attended the other's public events. Their separation was total. Employees felt forced to choose sides, loyalty becoming a currency. Family gatherings ceased entirely. Holidays passed without reconciliation. Despite everything, both men believed they were serving humanity. History would later judge them not by intention, but by impact. The Kellogg feud became a blueprint for modern corporate conflict. Innovation, when combined with ego, proved explosive. And families, once fractured by ambition, rarely heal. What remained was legacy, powerful, profitable, and painfully incomplete. This legacy would echo far beyond breakfast tables. The story of the Kellogg brothers was no longer personal. It had become national history. And still, the stolen recipe lingered at the heart of it all. A single act that reshaped markets, morals, and bloodlines. As the century advanced, the brothers aged, but the conflict never softened. Silence replaced anger, but silence carried its own weight. Part 1 closes not with resolution, but with distance, irreversible and defining. As Keith Kellogg's company expanded, daily operations became increasingly impersonal. Decisions were now made by committees rather than individuals. Efficiency replaced experimentation, and speed replaced reflection. The business had outgrown its founder's original hands-on approach. John Harvey Kellogg sensed this transformation from afar. He believed the soul of the invention had been stripped away. What once aimed to heal bodies now served shareholders. To John, this shift marked a moral defeat. The brothers' philosophies no longer even spoke the same language. One measured success in influence and reach. The other measured it in discipline and restraint. Their shared origin had become irrelevant. Battle Creek changed with them. Factories dominated the skyline while the sanitarium slowly lost cultural relevance. The town's identity shifted from healing to manufacturing. Progress came with a quiet sense of loss. Employees who once admired John now followed Will's promise of stability and wages. Economic security outweighed philosophical alignment. Loyalty adapted to necessity. Ideals rarely survive hunger. John's public speeches grew increasingly defensive. He warned of degeneration, excess, and moral collapse. Audiences listened politely but less attentively. The world was moving forward without him. Will avoided public commentary about his brother. Silence became his strategy. Addressing the conflict risked exposing weakness. Success allowed him to remain quiet. Yet privately, the weight of the feud never disappeared. Memory lingered longer than resentment. Certain victories felt hollow. Wealth could not rewrite the past. The cereal industry now stood independent of its creators. Competitors multiplied, innovations accelerated, and markets expanded globally. What began as a family dispute had escaped personal control. The machine no longer needed its inventors. Historians would later simplify the story. They would speak of innovation, branding, and growth. But beneath those themes lay fracture, pride, and irreversible distance. The human cost remained invisible. Neither brother ever fully claimed victory. Each believed something essential had been lost. Their success came at the expense of reconciliation. Some achievements demand a price that cannot be repaid. Part 1 ends not with resolution, but with momentum. The conflict has reshaped an industry and set forces in motion. The consequences will extend far beyond the brothers themselves. And the echoes are only beginning. As the new decade began, the cereal industry no longer revolved around personalities but power. Corporations replaced individuals, and market share replaced moral vision. What the Kellogg brothers started was now beyond personal influence. The conflict had entered its institutional phase. Will Keith Kellogg adapted quickly to this reality. He surrounded himself with executives trained in finance, logistics, and expansion. Decisions became calculated rather than intuitive. Growth demanded structure. John Harvey Kellogg rejected this transformation entirely. He believed bureaucracy diluted truth and corrupted purpose. To him, systems were enemies of conscience. His resistance isolated him further. The Battle Creek Sanitarium continued operating, but its influence declined. New medical institutions adopted more flexible approaches. John's rigidity no longer appealed to modern patients. Authority shifted away from him. Meanwhile, Will expanded internationally. Kellogg cereal entered foreign markets through trade agreements and shipping routes. Breakfast became standardized across borders. An American habit turned global. This expansion reshaped the Kellogg name. It no longer represented a philosophy but a product. Identity was simplified for mass consumption. Complexity was sacrificed for reach. John viewed this simplification as erasure. His ideas, once radical, were now footnotes. The origin story faded behind packaging. History favored visibility over authorship. Legal disputes resurfaced sporadically. Patents, trademarks, and naming rights continued to spark conflict. Lawyers replaced brothers as primary actors. The feud persisted in paperwork. Charles William Post benefited immensely from this environment. His company thrived by positioning itself between extremes. Balance became his competitive advantage. Moderation sold well. Post's success further aggravated John. To lose influence was painful. To watch a rival prosper using adapted versions of his ideas was unbearable. Resentment deepened. Will rarely acknowledged Post publicly. Competition was treated as inevitable, not personal. Emotional detachment protected his focus. The market rewarded calm. By now, the brothers lived in separate worlds. Their schedules never overlapped. Their names appeared in different contexts. Shared memory was all that connected them. The public remained unaware of the depth of the rift. Newspapers preferred success stories over family tragedy. Myth replaced reality. Conflict was sanitized. Inside the family, silence became tradition. Younger relatives learned not to ask questions. History was carefully avoided. Absence became inheritance. The cereal empire continued expanding without emotional resolution. Factories multiplied. Profits climbed. But reconciliation never arrived. John aged with frustration rather than peace. His influence narrowed to a loyal few. Conviction replaced adaptation. Time did not soften him. Will aged surrounded by success yet burdened by memory. Accomplishment did not erase regret. Distance had a cost. Some victories feel incomplete. The Kellogg story had become a lesson in modern capitalism. Innovation without alignment fractures families. Growth magnifies conflict. Scale amplifies consequences. What began as a stolen recipe had matured into a cautionary tale. Creativity ignited it. Ego fueled it. Industry immortalized it. As the years passed, the Kellogg brothers became symbols rather than participants. Their companies continued expanding while their personal influence diminished. The world remembered their names but forgot their voices. History had moved ahead without waiting for reconciliation. John Harvey Kellogg spent his later years entrenched in conviction. He continued writing, lecturing, and defending his philosophy with unwavering certainty. Adaptation never came. To compromise, in his mind, was to surrender truth. His health declined slowly but steadily. Ironically, the man obsessed with bodily discipline could not escape physical limitation. Time weakened what ideology could not. Mortality proved impartial. Will Keith Kellogg approached old age differently. He shifted focus toward philanthropy, education, and legacy planning. Wealth became a tool rather than a pursuit. Reflection replaced expansion. In 1930, Will established the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. Its mission emphasized children, health, and education. This act reframed his public image. Legacy now extended beyond cereal. John viewed these efforts with skepticism. Charity without moral discipline felt hollow to him. Even near the end, alignment remained impossible. The distance endured. The brothers never reconciled. No final meeting occurred. No letter closed the wound. Silence became the final chapter of their relationship. John Harvey Kellogg died in 1943. His death marked the end of an era rooted in moral absolutism. The sanitarium soon declined without his authority. His influence faded quietly. Will Keith Kellogg lived longer, witnessing the full scale of the empire he helped create. Success surrounded him. Yet memory followed closely. Achievement does not erase regret. When Will died in 1951, the Kellogg name was firmly embedded in global culture. Breakfast tables across continents carried his legacy. Few knew the personal cost behind it. The companies outlived the conflict. Corporations endure where people do not. The feud dissolved into footnotes. Profit continued uninterrupted. Historians later debated authorship. Who truly invented the cereal empire? Innovation rarely belongs to one mind. Credit fractures as ideas scale. The Kellogg story became a case study in business schools. Rivalry, intellectual property, and family conflict formed its core lessons. Students learned strategy, not sorrow. The human element faded. Families watching from afar saw only success. Few noticed the warning beneath it. Wealth magnifies fractures already present. Money accelerates division. The stolen recipe was no longer about food. It symbolized ownership, ego, and control. Creation without alignment invites collapse. Innovation carries responsibility. Generations later, the Kellogg name remains powerful. Branding outlasts memory. Logos survive longer than relationships. Legacy simplifies what life complicates. The brothers' feud reminds us that progress often demands sacrifice. But not all sacrifices are necessary. Some are chosen. And some are irreversible. Empire's echo is not about cereal. It is about ambition unchecked by empathy. About ideas growing faster than understanding. About families losing each other to success. The world gained an industry. Two brothers lost each other. History gained a lesson few remember. And breakfast was never the same again. This is how innovation echoes through time. Not only in markets and products, but in silence, distance, and memory. The empire endured. The family did not.